Good morning, everyone. The purpose of this press conference is to provide an update to the internal investigation into the police action near 33rd and Seward Street on March 21st, 2013. The investigation has been thorough, and I am able to provide this update because the bulk of my investigation is complete. However, the investigation remains ongoing as we continue our due diligence. I am still bound by contractual guidelines, so I will not be able to talk about the specifics of the internal investigation. In addition, I don't want any of my personnel decisions to be undermined because I break the contractual language and talk about a personnel matter. And quite frankly, it would not be fair to the officers involved. I will provide my findings up to this point and address matters that can be explained outside of the internal investigation. The internal investigation has progressed on an expedient pace because I truly believe closure and transparency is in the best interest of all involved. However, fairness and thoroughness was not sacrificed in order to do so. I want to thank my executive command staff who's standing to my right. I introduced them last time I had a press conference. While the ultimate decisions here today are mine, I am extremely appreciative of their expertise and professional feedback that they have provided. I recognize the integrity of this investigation is of extreme importance to the community, and for that reason, I am utilizing an outside reviewer. The reviewing entity is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. With me today is Special Agent in charge of the local FBI office, Mr. Tom Metz. He's standing to my left. In addition, at various stages of this ongoing investigation, I consulted with the City Prosecutor's Office, the Douglas County Attorney's Office, and our City Legal Department. But I want to be clear on one thing, and make no mistake about this. This is an Omaha Police Department investigation. A lot of people have asked me, Chief, what did you think of the video when you first saw it? My initial thoughts were these. I knew the outside environment was going to be active, being at an election season and outside pressures would be present. As such, I was determined to conduct the investigation without outside interference and influence so as not to obscure the impartiality of the investigation. Indeed, like any other investigation, this one was guided by the need to determine what took place, and my findings today are based on evidence and the line that I have drawn as chief. I knew a thorough and fair investigation needed to take place. I also knew there would be some that would rush to judgment. I also knew, regardless of my findings, public trust has been damaged, and I needed to take steps to restore that public trust. This is the primary reason I am being as open as possible and having this press conference here today. Lastly, I strongly felt, regardless of the outcome, the police department and the community could come out of this stronger together. To provide some order to my press conference, I will provide my findings up to date. I've already given the media a copy of a timeline of events and the arrest information and the various charges on the Johnson brothers. I will address questions posed to me over the last 2 weeks about the incident. I will discuss next steps. Where do we go from here? And at the end, I will take some questions. Here are my findings to date. The Omaha Police Department has tremendous, dedicated professionals, but we did not carry ourselves in a manner representative of the Omaha Police Department on March 21st near 33rd and Seward Street. Many of the police actions that took place that day are in violation of our policies and do not represent how I want our officers to carry themselves. The internal investigation focused on what took place outside, that we all saw on video, but also what took place inside the residence, which we did not see on the video. To date, 3 officers have been relieved of duty pending a termination hearing with the city's Labor Relations Director. 1 command officer has been relieved of duty pending a termination hearing with the city's Labor Relations Director. 3 officers are currently on administrative leave with pay pending the final outcome of the investigation. 1 officer continues to be reassigned pending the outcome of the investigation. These are my findings to date. I stand by my decisions, and any criticism leveled after today should be focused directly onto me. going to take some questions that I heard since the video was released. I've tried to condense them down, but I think it's important that I try and address them. The first question, was the use of force on the video justified? To answer this question, I would have to get into the specifics of the internal investigation, so I can't. However, to make a determination on whether or not use of force is justified, it is based on the objectively reasonable standard. Is the force reasonable given the totality of circumstances? To make this determination, any video footage would have to be combined with the officer's reports and/or the officer's interview as to what took place. Some people have indicated to me that any use of force is unjustified. This is simply not the case. While use of force is never pretty to look at, a law enforcement officer does have the legal authority to use force that is objectively reasonable to the situation. In police work, we are entering into people's lives at critical moments and during criminal situations, so compliance may have to be gained by force at times, and it's not always going to look pretty. Next question. Was it legal to chase the individual into the house? Without discussing the video, there are legal exceptions to the requirement of a warrant before entering into a residence. One is fresh pursuit. If an individual is going to be arrested and that person runs from the police, the officer can chase the suspect across the threshold of the house in order to make an arrest if it is a fresh pursuit. If significant time has elapsed and the pursuit is not continuous, then a warrant is needed. Another exception to the warrant requirement is exigent circumstances. A law enforcement officer can enter a residence without a warrant if he or she reasonably believes someone is injured or is being hurt inside the residence. On those occasions, we do not need a warrant. Next question. What happened inside of the house? This is completely germane to the internal investigation, and I won't be able to discuss. Any and all questions or any derivatives of questions that pertain to the inside of the house, I simply can't answer as part of the internal investigation right now. If my decisions are appealed to the arbitrator or become the subject of a criminal or civil proceeding, then elements of what took place in the house can become public. What happened to the dogs at the scene? 2 dogs were picked up from the residence by the Nebraska Humane Society as they were called by officers thinking the dogs would be left home alone, because at that point everybody was either being taken to jail or to the hospital. Why did so many officers respond? This was a help an officer situation. The officers arriving don't necessarily know what's going on. When that help an officer goes out, that's the gravest of situations for every officer to hear. That means one of their co-workers, one of their fellow law enforcement officers needs assistance now. And that is why all the officers responded. For the safety of my officers, it is important that any officer nearby respond as fast as possible and continue responding until that help an officer is canceled. Next question. Did the Omaha Police Department release the criminal histories of the Johnson brothers to deflect attention from our mistakes or make them look bad? The answer is no. My directives to the Press Information Office of the Omaha Police Department was in 3 parts. The first one was that I will be the only person authorized to talk about the internal investigation. 2, we were going to let the public vent with comments on our social media Facebook page, as we will accept the good with the bad, and the only posts that we took down were the ones that were threatening, had foul language, or other offensive nature. And the final directive was we will comply with any and all media requests that we are legally able to do so. We were asked by the media to provide the criminal histories, so we did. Was the police helicopter up? The Omaha Police Department helicopter was not up on this night, on March 21st. How many total officers responded? There were 21 officers that were at the scene. There were 2 command officers at the scene. The Omaha Police Department breaks down the city into 4 quadrants. Each quadrant is commanded by a police captain. That captain will roughly see over 100 officers. Each shift is commanded by a police lieutenant. Within that shift, there are 3 sergeants. 2 of the shift supervisors were there that night. The lieutenant was off on this day.